So our video this time is about Sayler Park, our beautiful home. We are nestled right along the Ohio River in Cincinnati, Ohio. Sayler Park was officially established in 1911, but a lot of the homes here are older than that. Because obviously, you know, people were here before it was officially established. It's named after Nelson Saylor. His whole family was here. But a lot of the homes are from the 1800s, well over 100 years old. And so there's a lot of history here, and with a lot of older homes comes a lot of spirits. So that is what our video is about. We are going to take you on a haunted tour of Sayler Park. Some people have agreed to come forward and share their stories. So we're going to show you the houses, we're going to tell you the stories, and we hope you enjoy it.
So our first story comes from Denise, who lives on Chelsea in Sayler Park. And her story is about Miss Fanny Lawrence. She actually died in the house that Denise lives in. She knows that Miss Fanny was an old artist. So before they moved in, the house was a burned out shell. So basically I'm assuming that means it was on fire, it caught on fire. While the house was empty, the neighbors experienced paranormal activity from the house. One night during a party at the neighbor's house was empty still, the neighbors were in their house outside, pebbles were being thrown into the party that was happening in the yard. The police were called, and when the police came to the house, they found no pebbles laying around the yard, and obviously no one in the house. Not even any signs of anybody being in the house. But as the police officers got back to their car, pebbles were all over the top of the hood of their car. So that was one thing before Denise's family even moved into the house. So Denise was a little shy about telling her story, so I'm telling it. So I have to read it because, of course, I don't know it. So after Denise moved in, they experienced some paranormal activity themselves. So her and her husband moved in to start a family. While working on the house, Denise was taking a bath home alone, and someone slammed their hand against the bathroom door. So while she was in the bathroom taking a bath, someone slammed their hand against the bathroom door. Of course, she jumps up, goes and checks it out. No one was in the house.
So they were obviously doing renovations. And
right.
Stuff. And renovations can be a big thing that makes spirits restless.
Yeah,
and
restless and
angry.
Mm-hmm. Several years later, she said in her house she's got an older home, and it has a third floor. So one of the perks of being the oldest child in the house, you got to stay on the third floor. It had its own space and things like that. So several years later, while their son was in that third floor bedroom, he would experience, they were, I guess, kind of still working on the house as they were going along. So there was sheets of drywall up on that third floor with him. So he would experience the drywall moving, like being moved from one spot to the next. Full sheets of drywall. So that takes a lot of energy to do. So that happened on the third floor. Things seemed to be concentrated on the third floor. Around that same time, in another bedroom, one of her daughters had musical water globes, and they would turn on by themselves. So now a couple years later, that son's gone, and this daughter moves up to the third floor, and she's now up there. And some more water or some more musical globe activity going on. But they at one point were putting a new roof on the house. So the contractors told them that because that third floor was obviously so close to the roof, they had to empty everything off of the walls, take everything down, because they would be hammering and they didn't want things falling off the walls and breaking. So the daughter did it. She removed everything. And one of the things that came off of the wall was a cross, I guess a crucifix. And it was over the top of her bed. So she removed everything, I guess then left the room, and when she came back up, the cross was hung back up in place.
Ooh, that connection.
Yeah. So she then removed the cross again, and she did this 3 more times. Removed it, went back to the room, cross is hanging again, removed it, went back to the room, cross is hanging again, and finally said, cross is staying up.
Right.
So she left the cross hanging. So now one of the reasons I think that Denise told me one of the reasons is Miss Fanny has been quiet for a while, and so I think she didn't really want to go on video, or and we had a couple of people feel similarly. So anyway, so that's her story about her house. Creepy. And I want to go on note saying that her house is 4 doors down from mine. So that does not make me feel easy. So that's Denise's story, and we thank her for sharing it. This is Denise's house on Chelsea. Okay, so our second story that was given to us by Dawn. Dawn, as in female Dawn. Her house, she currently lived in this house. She does not live in this house right now. So it was on it is located on Gracely Drive, but like I said, she does not live there now. She said that house was definitely haunted. Definitely things went on in that house. She said on many nights they would go to bed and their dog would bark like crazy, and for no apparent reason. And dogs are hypersensitive, and we'll get into that later in this video. But so anyway, so that was one thing. The dog seemed to be real uneasy, at night. So Dawn herself would see a small girl in her bedroom. She said she would show up a couple times a month and would usually sit on the end of Dawn's bed. I asked her if she felt that...
That's close to Nelson Park, too.
It is close to Nelson Park. But we'll get into that.
Yeah, and you'll know why I said that.
So anyways, I asked her if the girl seemed to know she was there, and I believe she told me she didn't, which makes sense because, she's sitting on the end of the bed. She clearly doesn't see her. So, but Dawn saw her. So anyway, so these things seem to, happen in her room. This little girl was seen in her room multiple times a month. So that's creepy in itself. Like, that's one of my fears, like seeing somebody in my bedroom. But anyway, so one other particular time that happened in this same house is one night Dawn's mom stayed overnight, and in the morning her mom asked her why in the world was she up cooking so late. So I guess she heard things going on overnight in the night. And Dawn said no one was up at all during the night. They all went to bed and no one got up. So don't know what the mom was hearing, but clearly that she heard something. So so there was some activity in the kitchen on one night. But she said the majority of the activity was the little girl, dogs barking, and that sort of thing. So that's creepy. And we thank Dawn for. Okay, this house is the house on Gracely of the story that Dawn told. So who we have with us today, she's our first person that was brave enough to come in front of the camera. I have a lot of stories to tell, but not many people want to get in front of the camera. They want me to read them. But anyways, this is Tori. And Tori is from a family in Sayler Park, much like mine and Aaron's. Large family, generations of Sayler Parkers. So Tori is, I guess you're not even the last generation of your family, correct? So, anyway, so Tori has lived in multiple homes. Well, I guess one is your grandmother's home, which is, we're going to start with her grandma's home. She's going to tell us 2 different stories. So we're going to start with her grandmother's home. So take it away, Tori.
Okay. This is actually a story that my mom told me when I was younger. Before my mom and dad got married, she was staying at my grandma's house overnight, and they had to sleep.
Now, where does your grandmother's house sit?
Gracely Drive.
Gracely Drive.
And they had to sleep in separate rooms, and in the middle of the night, she heard my dad's little sister get up and go to the bathroom, but she never came back. So in the morning, they were eating breakfast, and my mom said, "Veronica, I heard you go to the bathroom. last night, but I never heard you go back to bed. And Veronica was like, I didn't go to the bathroom last night. So, yeah. So my grandma continued saying that she thinks there's a ghost in the house, and she named him George, and he's friendly, and then he just kind of walks up and down the hall.
Is he still active to this day? Because I'm assuming that was, what, 30 years ago?
Yeah, it was before I was born. Yeah. So I haven't heard any stories, but I'm sure he is.
Do you know, now we have, we're friends with the one of the women in the Sayler Park Historical Society, and she's going to try and give us background on all the houses that we talk about. Do you know any background of the house, like how old it is?
I don't. It's like...
I would say 18th century, don't you think?
Yeah.
It's a beautiful old home.
Yes, it is. And my grandma had like 13 kids in it.
Right.
So
right. Big family.
It's a huge house.
And she still lives there?
Yes, all by herself.
All by herself in that big house. Wow, that's crazy.
Not all by herself. She's
well,
got George keeping
George is there.
George and her dog.
And you know, that's really funny that she named him, because I have probably heard 10 stories over the last 24 hours from people who have contacted me, and a lot of them have named their ghost.
I named mine.
Some of them name them because they feel like they know the person that's doing the haunting, and some of them just name them because they're friendly and they want to give them a name and talk to them. So as far as you know, your grandmother hasn't heard any recent activity.
Right.
So yeah, that's pretty neat. So this is Tori's grandmother's house.
Okay.
All right, we're back at it with Tori. Now she's going to tell us a story about the house you grew up in.
Yep.
Again, an older house.
Mm-hmm.
Probably not as old as your grandmother's, but close.
Yeah.
So take it away.
Yeah, actually, my grandma's house and my house are like back to back. Our
that's
backyards
right,
meet. So, but when I was talking to my mom yesterday, she reminded me of another story. I was 2 years old when I first moved into the house that I grew up in, and she said me and my two older sisters all would talk to somebody, and she'd be like, "Who are you talking to?" And we named this goes to Red. Like, I don't know where it came from, but we'd be like, "We're talking to Red," and she told me it was nothing like no like significant conversation, but just like conversations. And the dog and cat we had when we moved there wouldn't come in our house. Actually, the dog didn't come in our house for the first 3 years that we lived there.
Wow.
Yeah, and then my mom said one day she just came in, and I don't know what happened, but we stopped talking to Red, and yeah.
That was that. Was it your mom that told me that somebody slept on the couch and interacted with something?
Yeah, that was me.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
So was that the same story?
No, it's
Okay.
a different one.
Oh, okay.
So that happened. So I don't know what happened to Red. He disappeared. And we kind of made a joke about that. My mom would say, "We have two ghosts in here, Red and not me," because when she'd ask who did something, it was always not me, not me.
I think we all have that ghost.
Yeah.
So I remember your mom told me about one of you kids sleeping on the couch, and something happened during that time.
Yeah, that was me. My dad rehabbed the whole house, so there was times where like me and my sisters would always share rooms and stuff. So when I finally got my own room, I would never sleep in it because I was so scared, and I would always sleep on the couch, and I'd keep the door closed because I don't know, I guess I felt safe that way. Well, one night I woke up and the hall light was like just peering into the room, and I saw like the silhouette.
Because the door had opened up?
Right. Well, I don't know if I woke up to the door opening up, but the door was opened when I woke up.
Okay.
And I saw like the silhouette of my sister standing there. Like, I remember it just being like a shadow of a person. I didn't really see her face or characteristics. And I said, "Allie, will you close that door?" And she just kind of like looked and then turned and just walked down the hallway. And I remember I got up, I was so mad at her, and I just took the door and I slammed it shut and went back to bed. Like, it wasn't a big deal. And in the morning, we were eating breakfast, and I was like, "Allie, like, thanks for doing that. It's a sister thing, you know, just being a jerk." And she was like, "I stayed at my friend's house last night." Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So that was kind of like, I immediately got cold chills and realized like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was and it just was amazing how clear the
Yeah.
figure of the person was. And so I'm pretty sure there's like some type of young woman or young girl that inhabits the house.
Do you know, that's funny that you would say that, because the one thing that it seems like almost, not all, but almost a lot of the stories that I've heard, they involve a girl, whether it be a little girl or a girl. It's because because as soon as everybody started telling their story, I was like, well, is there some girl that runs around this neighborhood,
Right,
gets
might
in
be.
everybody's business? But yeah, so, but I mean, there were a couple that weren't girls.
Yeah.
But I would say if I got 10 stories, 8 of them involved a young girl, and yours involves a young girl. So it's weird, but so that's interesting.
Well, my main ghost isn't a young girl. I've seen a young girl, but only once. Our main ghost is a woman that looks just like me.
Okay.
Well, women are scary, so.
Yeah. So it's just interesting that they all seem to be, the majority of them seem to be female.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's probably because we have more power. It
Right.
takes a lot of power. It takes a lot of energy. We're full of energy.
Right, and I think we're a lot more stubborn and unforgiving, so maybe that's
Yeah.
why their spirits get stuck here.
And don't want to leave.
Yeah.
Right. We're set in our ways.
We're
Maybe.
coming for you.
Yeah. Maybe. All right. Well, those are great stories, and I do appreciate you coming and telling them to us. Because, like I said, I mean, everybody has some great stories, but as soon as I say, "Will you put them on video?" they're just like, "Oh no, I'm not going on video. You can tell it." Well, I don't want to tell someone else's. I will tell someone else's story, but I feel like it comes better from the person who went through it. Especially a couple of these stories. Like, I really feel like the person that went through it would be so much more dramatic, and it would be a better story. But so I appreciate you coming and telling us yours.
No problem.
And our first one,
Yeah.
our first 2 stories. So we're excited. Thank you so much.
And this is the house that Tori grew up in. Sure, I'm gonna get a good. It's kind of in the. They're kind of brighten up.
Okay, so Kobe couldn't be with us during our campfires. We have a couple of stories we're going to tell outside the campfires ring. But she has lived in Sayler Park her entire life, and she's going to tell us her paranormal activity that has been going on in her house. Take it away.
So at one point we had
Where's your house at?
Rockaway,
Okay.
and at one point we had 8 boys living in our house, and we have a wood shop in our basement, and the house used to belong to my grandparents. So Johnny had his workshop in the basement, and he didn't really like these boys there. So we had one who would go downstairs,
And Johnny was the ghost.
Yes, Johnny's the ghost.
Okay.
And we had one guy who would go downstairs to get laundry, go to the freezer, whatever. And Johnny would turn the lights out on him. And Kurt would go
Yikes.
running up the stairs. I'd go down, and he'd be just fine with me being there. But he did not like those boys being there at all. And his wife, Josephine, her girls used to live in the attic. And this is another ghost, but my brothers lived in the attic, or live in the attic now, and she messes with their alarm clocks, turns them on, turns them off, just messes with the time, whatever. She didn't like them being up there either.
Yeah, sometimes they don't like it in their space. All scary dog again. We have him in the background of most of our videos. We're looking at somebody. So this happens still to this day.
Yep.
Upstairs.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they still mess around.
And your mom was saying that your dad actually saw Josephine.
Yep.
Yeah.
He would sleep on the couch when he came home from the army, and she wasn't fond of him being in the living room. So she'd sit on the steps and stare at him. What are you
Oh,
doing in my
wow.
house?
Hmm.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yep.
Oh, great. All right, well, thanks for sharing.
Thank you for having
And so, we're going to put this on a YouTube, just so you know.
That's fine.
All right, so thank you for sharing.
This is Carla and Kobe's house on Rockaway.
All right, hi again. Now we are around our campfire, and we're going to tell some stories because we can't get many people to actually come on the video and tell their story. So Aaron and I are going to tell the stories for a couple of people, but then we also have our own stories to tell in houses that I grew up in and the house that Aaron currently lives in. But before Aaron tells her story, we're going to pan and everybody say hi. Got a couple of ladies here tonight. Hi. A couple of ladies from the Sayler Park Historical Society.
Yep.
Giving us a little background on some of these houses. So we have a little background on them as well. So Erin's going to tell her story about the house that we are currently sitting in front of.
Yep. So my house is in Sayler Park on Goodrich. It was built in the 70s, so it's not that old. But we have, got a frog in my throat. We have a ghost who we have named Autumn because she is most active in the fall. So a few years ago we decided we would name her Autumn. It started when we first moved in. I had just had my first daughter, and she was a baby. And when we would go in her room at night, we have a radio right here in the garage, and we would hear the radio on. So we would come down, turn it off, and then when we would get up in the morning, the radio would be on again. So we just kind of figured like maybe some frequency was getting crossed somewhere, and after it did it for a while, it started getting annoying, so we just unplugged it. So then after that, when Riley was about 2, she started like being really afraid to stay in that room. Like, we would go to put her in bed at night and she would like cling to us and wouldn't stay in that room. So we had to put her on the couch, let her fall asleep on the couch, and then put her in bed. And then even then, most nights she would wake up and come get in bed with us. So we finally just moved her in with our older daughter, got them bunk beds so they shared a room. So then I turned that room into my massage room. I was doing massage for a while. And probably about 4 years ago.
Just turning the fire.
I think that's the wind. About 4 years ago, it got to the point where she was like super active, like to the point where you could get her to do stuff on demand. Again, she was the most active in that room.
Well, before that, tell Gary.
Oh yeah, that's true. When Riley was a baby, Gary was feeding her one night, and he was sitting in our living room, and the way his chair sat, like the TV was like where you are, and then the hallway down to our bedroom was right here. So he's sitting here watching TV while out of the corner of his eye, he thought he saw me walk out of our bedroom. So he looked down and he was like, "What are you doing up?" And then she just faded away. And he was like, "Guess that wasn't Aaron." So he was a big non-believer until that, and then that kind of converted him into a believer. And then right after that, it was probably like 3 days later. We live in a cul-de-sac, so we have a neighbor here and a neighbor here. Well, this neighbor was coming out to go to school, this neighbor was coming out to go to work, and when this neighbor came out, he looked over towards my front door and he said, "Hey, Aaron." So this neighbor looked over, and right when they both looked, she faded. And then they both looked at each other like, "You saw that, right?"
But I have even take that one step further. The neighbor over here, I actually picked him up to go to school, to take him and my boys to school. So he was always sitting out on the curb every morning, and that particular morning when we picked him up, he was peeking out of his door, and when he came out, I said, "Were you running behind?" And he was like, "No." And he told us that story, and he was so freaked out by it that he had just saw, what she just described. So, yeah, it was... Yeah, he was
and that's
real
what
freaked out by
people,
it.
I mean, everybody that's seen her describes her as like a woman about my height and build with long brown hair. So back to years later, a couple years later, it's my massage room. That fall, she had gotten so active that she was doing stuff on demand. And it was always like the light and the fan in that bedroom were always on. We even went as far as, because we thought again, maybe some frequencies getting crossed, because it always happens when the weather starts getting colder. So we went around and had all of our neighbors open their garage doors, lock their cars with their remotes, turn on their air conditioner, turn on their heat, like see if anything that they were doing was triggering our fan and light. But what's weird is it always does something different. Like it's the fan's on high, the fan's on low, the light's on, the light and the fan are on. So you would think if it was something else, it would always do the same thing. But so anyways, one time I was even doing a massage, and 3 times I had to stop in the middle of the massage and turn the fan off because she kept turning it on right in the middle of the massage, so I'd have to like go over and hit the button. Finally, by the 3rd time, I just told the guy, like, sorry, my ghost won't stop turning the fan on. But, so, and then throughout the years, she's just been, you know, active in there, just doing that. You know, I'll come home most days, and either the light will be on or the fan will be on, and it's usually like, you know, if we have a warmer day and it gets hot in that room, the fan will be on, so I think she just gets hot. But, yeah, I mean, she's kind of part of the family now. We all know she's there. I actually had a psychic come do a reading on the house when Mason was a baby because I wanted to make sure that if it was something that's most active in his room, that it wasn't anything, you know, even though she had never done anything malicious, I just wanted to make sure. And the psychic said that we have a golf course right over here, and there's Indian burial mounds there. And so she said that she was an Indian in her previous life, and that she was like a caregiver and a nurturer. And so she's most active like when I have babies, because she wants to come and help take care of the babies. So it got to the point where when Mason was a baby, for some reason with him, I was terrified of SIDS. So every night when I would put him to bed, I would say, okay, Autumn, you're on duty. If anything happens, you come wake me up. And it just made me feel better to do that and know she's in there watching over him. But yeah, now that it's fall again, she's starting to get active again. Like I said, almost every day when I come home, either his light or his fan's on.
Well,
and I know.
What she also did, though, when Mason was a baby, you know, Aaron would put him to bed, and she would turn the lights on, so then it would wake him up. So when Aaron would go in there and see what he was fussing about, the lights would be on.
Mm-hmm.
So you know, that got a little annoying, and she would tell her, you know, Autumn, stop turning the lights on.
Well, she did it a couple times, and then I told her, and then she stopped. But yeah, I mean, the kids all know Autumn's here. We all know Autumn's here, and she's just part of the family now. And the psychic also told me that, you know, she feels comfortable here because she knows that we welcome her, and we're fine with her being here, so she feels comfortable here. So this is my house. This is on Goodrich Lane, and this is where Autumn lives.
Because we had a couple of people that wanted to give their story but didn't want to be on video, I'm going to tell several. I have several more, but I'm still getting some pieces of some of these stories. But this particular story happened on Graceley Drive in an older home. How old would you think that house is? Early 1900s?
I'm not sure.
But I mean older.
Oh,
Yes.
before that.
Okay.
I think it's, yeah.
So this one's real old. It's 3 stories. So I think at one point it was turned into like apartment type building, to where somebody lived on the 1st floor, somebody lived on the 2nd floor. So this individual who gave me this story told me that when she lived there on the 1st floor, and she said all kinds of things happen in there all the time. Lights coming on, you'd hear footsteps when there isn't anyone there, but there were clear footsteps right in front of you. She would go out for the night. She would know that all the lights in the house, because when she lived there, I don't think anyone lived in the house but her. So she said she knew all the lights were turned off. She'd come home, and lights like in the 3rd floor were on, those types of things. She said lots of doors opening and closing. So that house, she said, was in Capitol, very haunted, very creepy. So a lot of activity going on in that house.
Okay, so this is the house that Debbie told us about, the one that's a 2-family. She lived on the 1st floor, and that upstairs window, single window, would light be on when she would come home from places.
The next story I have is from a woman named Debbie, and it's about the house she currently lives in on Jersey, here in Sayler Park. She said prior to her living in the house, and it's a 2-owner house. She owns it now, and prior to that, the people that, I don't know if they built it or they're the only ones that lived in it. There was a situation with one of the sons in the family where he lost his life at a very young age. So she said that in the house now that she lives in, she has seen and heard doors opening and closing, footsteps, and I'm reading what she wrote. That's why I'm looking down here. She would hear her walking across the floor upstairs. It's a hardwood floor, so she would hear a lot of creaking. She'd be there alone painting and such, and she would hear all kinds of activity. So at one point, she was the only one in the house, and she woke up. I think she said her son had gone to school, her husband had gone to work, and she woke up to a girl and a boy talking in her bedroom, and she thought she was dreaming because she opened her eyes to make sure she was awake, and through the dark, she couldn't see anything, but she heard as clear as we are talking right now, she heard a girl telling the boy that it was time to go. And she said, and it was as clear as that. Like she just said to him that it was time to go, and he said he wasn't ready. So she said she then pulled the covers over her head, and she said she heard him say it one more time, and then there was nothing. But she said that creeped her out enough that she got out of bed and went and got holy water at the church and blessed the house. And since then, she hasn't really heard anything after that. So that is of her house that she lives in right now.
So this is Debbie's house.
Okay. So we've been compiling some ghost stories for our first edition of our Haunted Weeks. And our first edition, as we've said, is going to be of Sayler Park. And after compiling some of the stories and hearing what people had to say, it made me curious. Some of the things that they had to say made me curious. So I went online today and kind of looked for some answers to some of my curious questions. So basically, some of the people had made the comment that it seemed like the spirits or the ghosts or the energies or whatever seemed to like a specific person in their family. So I was curious as to why that would be. So I looked that up, and here's what I found out. So people will say that their ghost seems to be interested and more attached to a specific family member, when in fact, it isn't the ghost making a choice at all. It's the family member's ability to open their mind to the possibilities. So a person who can see spirits and energy do so because they have not closed off the section of the brain that allows us to see beyond total body energy. So people that are alive, we see you because your body is solid, your energy is solid. But after you die, you know, your energy becomes more dense. And that's why when people see ghostly figures, it's dense and you can see through it.
Less dense.
Yeah, less dense. So, so what that means, so basically what they're saying is people that can see that, it isn't because the ghost or the spirit has decided that's the person that they like or they want to see. It's actually the human being that's still alive that has opened their mind to the possibilities, you know, of the afterlife.
And kids can see it.
Well, so that goes on. So the brain has the ability to see so much more than most humans can even comprehend. Most human beings only use 30 to 40% of the actual brain.
I thought it was more like 5%.
Well, maybe it was just in this type of thing. I don't know, but that's what it said. That's because most humans only absorb what they're interested in, what they're taught, what their needs are for like jobs and hobbies, etc. While some human beings are very rare, they have the ability to actually open their minds to all possibilities. These people are similar to, like, you've ever seen the movie The Beautiful Mind, and you know, you hear stories of people who can see things and have knowledge of things that are, you know,
Otherworldly.
right. So that is because they have the ability, and not just because they try to, it's just because that is the way they are. They just open their minds and have the ability, you know, to see things and do things that the rest of us who think normally can't do, because we're almost like programmed that, you know, you hear people all the time say, well, I don't believe in, you know, the past life. Well, they shut their minds off to it. So the other interesting thing I found is a lot of times a person who can see these spirits and energies, you know, because we're all made up of energy, that's what we are. usually either suffer from like autism spectrum or some sort of mental state that's beyond what's considered normal. So those types of people, they use a part of their brain that we don't use, like the normal spectrum don't use. Same way as we use a part of our brain that they can't use or don't use. So that's why people who, might have like a deficit in like a mental deficit, they can see things and comprehend things that we can't. So basically, we are all capable of using our full brain. We just don't choose to, or we shut off the possibilities of doing it because all we ever really care about is our own needs, our everyday needs for what we need to survive. So basically, the ghost has not chosen a certain person. That certain person just has the ability to see energy of all sorts. So have you ever had the feeling that you're not alone, or you get the chills for no reason? So what that is that is your body's ability to feel energy that's close to you. You don't see it, but your body is feeling it. So you're getting the chills, or you're getting the feeling that you're not alone, and that's your body's energy absorbing the energy that's there that you can't see. So the reason that, I want to get this one right. So anyway, so when you're alone and you get that feeling, it could possibly be because you have an energy near you that you can't see. Why don't you feel that way when I see her or I see her? Because I see them. So I don't have that feeling. I can visibly see them, so I don't get that feeling. It's the same way that when somebody tells a story, whether it's either an emotional story or it's a feel-good story or it's a scary story, and you say, oh my gosh, I got chills. It's because your mind is feeling the emotions of what you're hearing, so your body, oh, there's that scary ghost dog again. So your body has the ability to feel that emotion. But when you feel those things and no one's around, it could be it's possible that there is an energy around you in your home or wherever you're at that is creating your personal energy to feel that unforeseen energy. So I found that interesting, especially because when people were saying, oh, it seems like, our ghost liked my daughter so-and-so, or it seemed like our ghost liked my brother, or, the dog, or whatever. So it did go on to say that children and dogs see things that adults don't see because their minds have yet to be tainted. Dogs' minds aren't tainted at all. But so anyways, their minds are open to things that we close our minds to. So that's why, you hear a lot of people say, my dog barks at stuff that isn't even there. It's because animals, especially dogs, they have an open mind, so they see things that we think they shouldn't be seeing. And it's the same with kids, especially young kids, before their minds have been tainted, babies and such. They see things that we don't see. You might walk in a room and they're talking or looking or giggling at something that really isn't there to us, but it is to them. So that was kind of interesting, and that's what we found out. That's what I found out.